Welcome to this week's episode of the Keep It Off podcast. It's the place where you will get the unfiltered truth about exactly what life is like after you have lost loads and loads and loads of weight, which is brilliant, and it doesn't matter how you've done it, but it's the truth about the challenges we face and the obstacles that come away and the struggles that we all have in keeping our weight off forever. I'm Mel Harris, I'm your host, and I am delighted to have Mr. Shaw Summers with us today. Shaw Summers is a man who is very well known in the industry of anything to do with weight. He's a renowned weight loss surgeon. He was the host of the Fat Doctor series, the Food Hospital series, and you can always see him commenting on BBC and ITV and anywhere else where they want to know about the subject of obesity, basically. So welcome to this week's episode. Thank you for being here, Shaw Summers.
Thank you for asking me, Mel. Always happy to have a chat with you.
Thank you so much. Shaw, today I want to talk to you about something that most people might say, oh, that's a bit basic, but I know it's not. The stomach. I think that a lot of us have misconceived ideas about our stomachs. So I want us to start at the basics. I want people to know how big an average human stomach is, regardless of bypass or sleeve. Is it absolutely the size of a 3-course meal? Or is it the size of an egg? How big is the stomach? And where is it actually located? Because I know, people say, oh, I've got a stomach ache and the hands are right down there, or, oh, my stomach hurts. And they're always going to this area. That's not right, though, is it?
Nope. No, the stomach is a part of your digestive tract. So your digestive tract basically has an entrance and an exit. And I think most of your listeners can figure out where those are. But in between those 2 points, we have the esophagus, which goes from the back of your tongue all the way down through the back of your chest to the bottom of your breastbone, which you can feel that knobbly bit at the bottom there between the two sides of your ribs, called the xiphisternum. And that's where the gullet, your esophagus, ends. Your gullet's about the size of a hose pipe, and it squishes food down, a bit like watching a worm wriggle. If you put food in the esophagus, it goes, pushes it into your stomach, which is a floppy bag sitting at the bottom of your esophagus, but at the start of your small intestine.
Can I just confirm the gullet is literally another word for esophagus, right?
Gullet is the esophagus, yeah. So food goes down the gullet, esophagus, goes into the stomach, where the stomach churns your food up and mushes it around and mixes it with acid. That's why people get acid reflux, because the stomach's full of acid. And we think the acid is there for a number of things. It preconditions the food and helps it break down, but it also kills off any bacteria, toxic bugs, viruses, whatever that's in your food, so that you don't ingest a whole load of stuff that's going to kill you without your stomach at least having a chance of killing it off. And then bit by bit, your stomach has a little valve at the bottom which opens up and allows food to go into the small intestine, which then pushes it along and digests it as it goes, with a load of digestive enzymes from your liver, from your pancreas, that mix with the food and break it down. And then in its pathway down the intestine, that those broken down elements of your food get absorbed and contribute to your digestion, your assimilation of the food you've just eaten.
Is our stomach very big, or?
So the stomach basically is there to accommodate the meal you're eating. So if you've got a load to eat, it will do its best to accommodate it. If there's not much to eat, it'll work on a little bit. Here's a model of a stomach, and this is about life size. The stomach basically starts where the esophagus ends, at the level of your bottom of your breastbone, the xiphisternum, and it sits there heading over to the right hand side, your liver will sit over the top of it like that, and the exit point, the duodenum, will head off down into the small intestine, and your pancreas, etc., sits underneath it, puts all the enzymes in there. But your stomach is a very floppy bag, and for those who can't see it because they're just listening in, it's about the size of my closed hand. And everybody's stomach is slightly bigger or smaller, but it's roughly the size of your closed hand, not closed fist, just a hand. But that's it in its non-expanded state. It's a very elastic organ. So if you fill it full of things, it will expand to fill the whole left side of your upper tummy underneath your ribs. So if you've just had a massive meal, the reason you get a stitch on the left side of your tummy, upper end, is because you've filled up your stomach. That's why it's stretching there and full of, what the carvery will give you for free.
Yeah. So is there a limit to how much that stomach can stretch?
Yes, there is a point. Rupturing a stomach is very hard to do because the pain will go, you have to stop now.
Right, before that point.
But if you've got a problem like a blockage to your stomach outlet, this can fill up and fill up and fill up. And if you were to then get a blow onto the stomach, someone hit you, or you have a car accident. So the classic is someone's been out for a big meal and they're driving home and they hit something and the belt goes crunch like that, the stomach can pop and burst.
Wow.
So that can be a problem.
Just to put people's minds at rest, is that fixable? Will surgery fix that? Is it life-threatening?
Oh, it's definitely life-threatening. It can be fixed, but it's a very serious condition. Thankfully, it's incredibly rare. In my career as a general surgeon, I've seen it maybe once or twice.
Oh, thank goodness.
Over 40 years. But it's, yes, if your stomach is fully distended and you misbehave or suffer an accident, fall down the stairs, whatever, that's not good. That's why it's not good to eat until you're fit to bust, literally.
Yeah, and what you're saying, though, is that, yes, you can eat to the point where you've stretched your stomach so much that it will effectively burst, but the pain signals that the stomach sends you before then will prevent you from being able to do that. Correct,
yeah. The only times we really see it now is if someone's got a cancer of the stomach which blocks the outlet,
right,
and the stomach just enlarges and enlarges. But most people know something's wrong. Their food's not going down, they feel stuffed all the time, they might feel reflux all the time, or that they eat food and then it comes back at them for no good reason.
Right, and that's an indication that something isn't quite right.
That if you're constantly burping and thinking, actually that's what I ate yesterday, and food isn't going through, you need to see someone, you need to get some advice.
Okay.
But that's the stomach. It's sits there, it's a muscular bag, it squeezes and mixes your food together with the stomach acid, which is there to firstly help digest the food, break it down into smaller bits, but also it helps detoxify the food. If you've got bacteria in the food you've eaten, or fungus or viruses, the acid will hopefully kill those off. And that's the normal function of the stomach. It mixes your food, breaks it down physically, but also mixes it with acid, which primes everything for the next stage, which is when the food gets released into your small intestine, out the exit pipe via your little pyloric sphincter, which relaxes every now and again, lets it out drip by drip, mixes with the pancreas enzymes and the bile, which then starts the actual digestion part of the process, where the mixed up chyme, as it's called, it's basically like porridge consistency that comes out the end of this. It's horrible stuff. You really wouldn't want to see it. The stuff that comes out of here gets then mixed with the digestive enzymes, and they break it down.
Right.
And it's an amazing process, because if you get some pancreas enzymes and you drop a piece of steak into it, within about 10 minutes, the steak is just slush.
Wow.
It's just totally digested. It's really, really amazing stuff.
Wow, that is interesting.
And very, very efficient.
Yeah.
And it does the same to carbohydrates. And then the bile from your gallbladder and liver is a bit like fairy liquid. You know, if you've got some fatty, greasy stuff in your kitchen sink and you squirt fairy on it and give it a rub, it disappears. It emulsifies it immediately. Well, that's what your bile does to fat in the digestive system. Your bile emulsifies it, and then the enzymes from your pancreas, the lipase, acts on those tiny little emulsified globules of fat to break them down into short chain fatty acids, which your body then just goes, we'll have those. Thank you very much.
Out of interest, how long does it take for the stomach to empty? Not for the whole digestive process, but how long does it take for the stomach to empty?
That depends on what you've eaten. And contrary to popular belief, solids empty quicker than liquids. But for most meals, your stomach should have squished it all up and squirted it out within about an hour.
Okay, that's right. Now I know a lot of people that listen to this podcast have had some kind of weight loss surgery. So if we look at, say, the bypass and the sleeve, how does that affect that normal stomach that you're holding in your hand? After a bypass, for example, we don't have that size of stomach anymore. How big is our stomach after that?
So when we do a bypass, we cut off just a little part of the stomach to use for food. So the bit above my fingers, the gullet empties into this tiny little pouch of stomach here.
Yeah.
And then what we do is we leave the rest of the stomach inside. So nothing is removed when we make a bypass. But what we do is we make the stomach a lot smaller, leave this, and then we bring up some intestine from here and plug that into here. So essentially the food short circuits.
Yeah.
It goes down into the small intestine, bypassing the stomach.
Yeah. So for those people, again, that are on audio, just so you know, whereas the size of the stomach before was the size of Shaw's hand, we're now looking at a stomach that is probably the size of one finger. That's the big
size
difference.
Of an egg.
About the size of an egg. Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
the length of a finger.
The size of a grapefruit.
Yeah.
It'll be about the size of an egg.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
An empty stomach is the size of a grapefruit.
Yeah.
The full stomach will probably be the size of a yellow melon, maybe a bit bigger.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So it can accommodate a lot of volume. It just relaxes and accommodates the food and then starts to contract and mush it all together with acid. And your stomach produces about 2 liters of acid a day.
Right.
And if you're scientifically minded, the pH is around 2, which is pretty damn acid, pretty damn strong acid, strong as vinegar at least.
Right.
And that will help physically break down the food. Okay,
so when you've had a bypass, we saw earlier how the stomach will extend into the left side. If you fill up the egg-sized piece of your stomach, what happens to that?
That will expand to an extent, but then it will just start to empty down through the new join straight into your intestine.
So it will force the food in and give you more pain, basically.
Well, it will be uncomfortable, yes. Yeah. It should give you a satiety signal, a strong satiety signal, because putting undigested food into your small intestine makes it send out a signal saying, hang on a minute, this is going too quick, slow down, stop eating. So that's part of the response of food in the small intestine, is to secrete GLP-1. Heard of that one before?
Once or twice.
So your intestines start to secrete GLP-1 when food goes through them. And if you put raw food into the small intestine, you get a strong GLP-1 signal. And that's the basis upon which the companies developed GLP-1 drugs.
Right. Yeah.
Because they thought, if we can mimic this signal, will it help lose weight?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Of course. And it will make you a lot of money.
That's the bypass. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they've spent billions developing the stuff.
Okay. Fair enough.
So they have to recoup their costs, otherwise they're never going to bother.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, regulatory processes have got in the way, and they've made it so expensive to develop drugs that it's almost counterproductive.
Yeah, which is a shame. And so now, if we're looking at a sleeved stomach, how different is that?
So a sleeve turns a stomach from a grapefruit size into a banana size stomach. So basically, this bit below my fingers gets cut away and thrown away.
Okay, so
we
it's
literally
actually
throw
removed.
it in the bin.
Right.
We actually remove it, and all that's left is the bit that goes from the esophagus down along what we call the lesser curve, the stomach, and then into the intestine. So all of this bit here underneath my fingers goes away.
Okay, so it's banana shape rather than banana size.
It's banana shape and banana sized, actually. It's a pretty good. One of the early developers of the technique used to call it banana stomach. Because that's what you get left with, a banana shaped, banana sized stomach.
Right. Okay.
And so that removes this part of the stomach. So the floppy expandable bit of the stomach that expands towards the left side is gone. Now that has two effects. One, physically, you can't fit a lot in there, because you can fill a grapefruit sized stomach with quite a bit before it really starts to expand. A banana shaped stomach is, you don't need to put much in there and it's full.
Yeah.
But also the stretch receptors of the stomach, which tell you when you've eaten too much, are gone. But also the ghrelin hormone cells are gone.
So they are in the part of the stomach that you have cut away and disposed of.
Yeah.
Right.
So in that respect, your ghrelin levels will change such that you don't feel so hungry. Your stretch receptors, for reasons we don't understand, because they're not active anymore, or less active, and you get less of a signal, it confuses them so that actually a small amount of food means that you feel full. And that also may be the remaining stretch receptors get stretched quicker and more actively, and your body says, oh well, if they're really stretched, then it don't care what the other ones are like. You've eaten too much, so stop.
Right.
And then we know that the stomach produces at least 150 hormones, depending on how quick you've eaten, what you've eaten, the bulk of the food, its flavor. It secretes a whole orchestra of hormones, which then determine in your brain whether you're happy, sad, whether you feel satisfied or not. By removing that bit of stomach, the balance of that orchestra of hormones is tipped in favor of losing weight, not feeling so hungry. So sleeve gastrectomy is what we call a metabolic operation. It will change your metabolism. It will switch it on, like a bypass.
So the bypass does the same.
It does. The bypass is probably the most active of our operations that we can do in terms of switching on the metabolism. So these ops have a mechanical effect. Can't eat as much, can't eat as quickly. They have a satiety effect, i.e. they'll fill up quicker because of the mechanics of it all. Yeah. And so you will want to stop sooner. But they also have a metabolic effect. They are metabolic operations. They change your metabolism.
So with the bypassed section of the stomach, that is still in the body, it hasn't been removed. So does that mean that the ghrelin and the signals are still there and still working?
They're still there, but because they don't see any food, your ghrelin is switched off so that you don't feel hungry.
Right.
Because it's disconnected, it seems to be that your ghrelin cells don't see food and you don't secrete so much ghrelin, which means that you're not so hungry. Yeah. But also the separating of the stomach physically seems to just break that signal chain that means that you feel like you've got an empty stomach and you're hungry.
Yeah.
For reasons we don't still understand, that physically separating those two bits of the stomach means that people go, yep, don't feel hungry at all. And you're going, yeah, I'm not sure why that's happening, but it is definitely happening. But the cells are still there. And we know that if we have to reverse a bypass, which you can do, very rare to do it, but if you have to reverse a bypass, put everything back as it was, people suddenly go, yeah, I'm hungry again.
Oh.
So everything starts to work again. So, but we don't quite know why that happened.
Why would you ever need to reverse a bypass? I'm assuming that would be to do with some other very serious health issues or problems with the bypass.
It's very rare to do it because the bypass has been overactive. In other words, you've lost too much weight. We've got to reverse it. It's incredibly rare. So I've done, at least 3,000 bypasses. I've had to reverse half a dozen of it or so.
Right.
But they've always been for illnesses that require me to reverse the bypass so we can treat them, like someone's got a cancer somewhere. And in order to treat the cancer, I've got to reverse the bypass so that we can do the right procedure for them. It's incredibly rare to have to reverse a bypass because of a problem with the bypass, but there are reasons, principally things like an ulcer at the bypass joint that just won't go away despite repeated treatment. We reluctantly have to reverse the bypass, and people say, that's fine, I've lost my weight, I'll be able to do it. No, I'm afraid as soon as you reverse the bypass, within a year, people are putting weight on going, help.
Could you convert it to a sleeve? Because the sleeve is non-reversible, obviously.
Sometimes you can. Once you've joined the stomach back together, you can remove all the rest of the stomach, and hopefully it will work as a sleeve. It's never quite as good as a first time round sleeve, but it's better than nothing. And you're right, if I reverse a bypass, I usually give people the option to come back 6 months later to convert it into a sleeve. I prefer not to do it all in one go, because if anything isn't right, and with revision surgery, repairing surgery, there's always the chance that things don't go to plan.
Yeah, but also you've said in a previous episode that the sleeve is probably the hardest operation to perform.
Yeah, to get it perfectly right, you've got to be much more exacting than with a bypass. And the bypass is a very forgiving operation, and if push comes to shove, you can reverse it. With a sleeve, once you've fired that stapler, there ain't no going back. And if you fired it in the wrong place, oops.
Yeah.
That's the best you can do.
Yeah. I want everybody to understand that we're talking about very extreme.
Yeah, it's rare.
Yeah.
Most surgeons nowadays who are doing bariatric surgery are the real deal, and they are people who are doing it all the time.
Yeah.
I think they're largely gone are the days of the cowboy surgeon who was doing one specialty one day, and the next day they're suddenly bariatric.
Yeah. So going back to the stomach again, like you say, it does extend. Does it shrink back?
Yes, it does.
I can feel a butt coming.
Yeah. So the stomach will expand to accommodate food, and if you're constantly expanding it, so you're constantly eating as much as you possibly can because it's there and your mum's feeding you, or you get a free pass at the carvery every Thursday, it will get used to being full, and it to a point when you fill your stomach, it is comforting. You feel happy, satisfied. It's a nice feeling. You get used to that, and you get to want that, especially if you're a bit low, or a host of reasons. It's all tied in with how you're feeling, your psychology, your well-being, your day-to-day, your stress levels. It will shrink back, but it's something that, again, you've got to get used to not filling your stomach all the time for that shrinking back to occur consistently, and for it to not feel like you're starving.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine it's a little bit like our skin. As we get older, we lose the elasticity in our skin. Is it similar with the makeup? Because the stomach's a muscle, right? Am I right in saying it's a muscle?
Yeah, it's muscle.
So does it lose its elasticity over time, or is that a myth?
What a good question. I've never been asked that one before, and I haven't even thought about it. So my initial reaction to that is, yeah, you're right. It will not be as active and as resilient, strong as it was in your 20s and 30s when you're in your 50s and 60s. And it might stretch more and not come back. So, you can get away with stretching your skin in your 20s, pregnancy being the archetype, and you may get away without stretch marks. Not so in your 40s or your 50s. And I suppose it's much the same as in the stomach, although in terms of how it works, I'm not sure it's going to make a massive difference if you've stretched your stomach. So I've operated on some of the world's biggest people, and I've not put my telescopes into their tummy and gone, oh my, what a big stomach. No, I put my telescope into their abdomens and go, that's a normal sized stomach.
Wow.
It's just very efficient at processing a lot of food.
Like we've said in previous episodes, you're taking in the calories but not burning them off.
That's right. Or you're assimilating them, and your metabolic regulation is so broken that almost it doesn't matter what you eat, you're going to put weight on.
Yeah. We now know the size of a stomach. With GLP-1s, the size of our stomachs doesn't change. It's our appetite that is effective. Our appetites are smaller rather than our stomach. Would it be fair to say that the appetite when we're on GLP-1s will reduce to being able to take in the same as if we had had a sleeve or a bypass?
I don't think it's quite as profound. Similar, yes, but not quite as profound. When you first have your weight loss surgery, people say, I forget to eat. I've never done that before, but I can go a whole day and go, oh my God, I haven't had anything to eat. I've forgotten about food.
Yeah.
Whereas even with GLP-1s, is it dinner time yet? I need to eat something.
Yeah.
So the effects are similar, but they're not as profound. And when we look at the effectiveness of the various treatment options we have for obesity, there's no question that whilst drugs are good, they're nowhere near as good as surgery. At the moment, my biggest task when I talk to people about the options for helping them with their obesity is to persuade them that sometimes surgery is the right first option for them, that you can do weight loss drugs, but you're not going to win with those.
Right.
They will help you lose some weight, and while you're on the drugs, you're going to be okay. But as soon as you come off the drugs, you're going to need something a bit more durable, a bit more profound.
Yeah.
And it's difficult with someone in their 20s and 30s when they're saying, yeah, but the medicine's working fine. I'm going, yeah, but you're going to be on those for life. Now, there's two things you've got to consider is one, the cost, and two, if you can't get hold of the drugs or you get a side effect of the drugs and you can't have them anymore, what are you going to do?
Yeah, that's actually something I do want to talk to you about a little bit later on, actually, the cost, because at the moment I'm thinking, well, and in fact, I know that a lot of people have brought up the same thing. We need a certain amount of nutrients and food in our bodies for it to work effectively. When we have a smaller stomach and when we have a smaller appetite, how can we ensure that we get enough nutrients into our system? It's very easy for us to say, well, you eat your protein first and then you eat the next bit and then you eat the next bit and we break it down, etc., etc. But actually, when we look at the digestive system as a whole, we can help our stomachs to get in the right amount of food that we need, because actually, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but digestion starts in the mouth, right? So the minute we put food in our mouth and we produce saliva and we chew it very thoroughly before we swallow it. We're already breaking it down so that the stomach itself doesn't have to deal with such large pieces of food that it just can't get anything else in.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable explanation. I suppose the process of digestion starts in the mouth. Yes, digestion itself, where the food is broken down into its constituent parts, small intestine.
Yeah.
But actually, yes, you need to chew your food thoroughly, because if you don't, your body's going to either not break it down completely, rare, or have to work harder to break it down completely. It's where people start getting tummy ache because, everything's squeezing away just to try and break down this lump of steak that you've swallowed whole instead of chewing it a bit.
Yeah, I guess there's a risk of feeling artificially full when actually you haven't eaten, you're blocked more than full and you haven't eaten enough to sustain your daily requirements.
Well, I think the body's such an efficient machine that it's very difficult to eat too little to sustain yourself. I think the danger is more that you eat at such too narrow a spectrum of foods that you run deficient on certain elements. So what I'm saying is, if you have surgery and you're eating very little, or you're on full dose GLP-1s and you're eating very little, it's very tempting to say, I have a yogurt in the morning and I have tomato soup at lunch and I have a small salad in the evening. And you go, yeah, where's your B12 in all of that? Because there isn't any. Where's your protein intake in all of that? Because there's a little bit in the yogurt. There's not a lot else in the rest of it. So this is why people need, when they're going into this, to do this properly, i.e. I want to lose 4 stones and I want it to stay off. It's really a good idea to have a session with a dietitian, not every month, but at least an introductory hours long talk going, look, this is what I like to eat. This is how I live my day. And the dietitian will either go, yeah, that's good, actually. I'd suggest you add in these things when you're on treatment. Otherwise good. Or if the dietitian bursts into tears, you've got a problem. Some people say, well, I like jacket mashed potatoes and I have them every day. That's my dinner. I have a mashed potato or a jacket potato with either cheese on it or baked beans. And dietitians will just burst into tears and go, oh my God, where do I start? Where's your proteins? You're not going to survive if you try that. So it's about education. It's about helping people understand that part of the process of long-term weight loss is eating a diet that works with your body, and it's a diet that you enjoy. So no one's going to force you to eat stuff that you think not touching that. But there's always options. There's always ways of getting in enough protein, enough fats. Big one, that one. And then carbohydrates to give you some energy if you need them.
I know that we have covered some of this previously, and we're going to go into a deeper dive into the proteins and especially the fats, because that confused an awful lot of people. We need to clarify that, but we're going to do that in another episode. Before we finish this episode, though, because I'm loving it so much, tell me about water. Now, I don't know if this applies to people on GLP-1s, but why are people that have had surgery told that they cannot drink water or anything with a meal? They should have 30 minutes before or wait 30 minutes after. What's the reasoning for that?
I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's one of those apocryphal old wives' tales that you mustn't. And I think it's historic. It comes from the days when we originally started doing bypasses back in the 80s and 90s. I first started doing bypasses in 1995. We deliberately made the outlet of the stomach pouch quite tight because we wanted to give people restriction, because we thought that's how it worked.
Right.
No one had invented Ghrelin by that time, or GLP-1. We had no idea that it actually was affecting metabolism. When you have this tight outlet, if you have solid food and you pour in a load of liquid, it's a bit like chucking a plug into a funnel and then pouring liquid on top. It's all going to overflow and people would go, up it comes.
Yeah.
So the advice was there to stop people having to be sick because they'd had something solid which was sitting in their little stomach pouch or in the top of their sleeve, and then you throw in a load of liquid and it's got nowhere to go, so up it comes. Nowadays that is not true. So firstly, if you have a sleeve or a bypass, you should not be sick. Vomiting should not be part of your experience at any stage. If you are being sick and food is getting stuck, there is something wrong with your operation. You need to see someone about that.
And it's not just that they are effectively not following the rules.
Not usually. You'd have to be really going at it, like sausage roll after sausage roll, without chewing to really overwhelm it. So back to the drinking and eating thing. You certainly shouldn't be glugging drinks while eating, but having a sip of fluid in between mouthfuls to clean your mouth and enjoy your food a bit better, I don't have a problem with. I don't think that alters the function of the surgery at all.
I think you've just made an awful lot of people, including me, very, very, very happy. So we don't need to worry about it's going to force the food through at twice the speed or...
No, I think what you drink is important. So water.
Yeah.
Water's fine. High calorie juices, fruit juice, Sunny Delight, all those miserable drinks that, stupid foods that should not exist, but they do, where they've got lots of extra calories, lots of sugar in them. If you have that with your meal, you're going to get what we call dumping syndrome.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my own personal experience is I can't tolerate fizzy drinks. They just bloat me out and I feel uncomfortable. And I've never been able to tolerate any kind of fruit juice, even if it says no added sugar. Because of the natural sugars, I instantly get dumping syndrome if I have a fruit juice. So I've had to learn to love water.
That's exactly what we want from the surgery, and what normally would be a side effect of stomach surgery, dumping syndrome. So when we used to do stomach surgery for ulcers or for cancer, we warn patients about dumping syndrome as an unwanted side effect. For bariatric patients, it's a wanted side effect. We want you to get it.
Yeah, it's a deterrent.
It's a deterrent.
Absolutely. And guys, you can believe it from me personally. It is a deterrent. It's not nice. Okay, I could talk to you all day, particularly about the stomach and how it works, but I do need to wrap this up. Before I do, I did promise I was just going to touch on the subject of cost, because when we're talking about GLP-1s, people may be on them for, if not life, certainly for many years. And that has an ongoing cost to it. How does it compare to if somebody went privately for a bypass or a sleeve? I know there's other surgeries out there, but obviously you can only speak for what you do at Streamline.
Yeah.
What are we talking?
So what we're talking about, in terms of choice of procedures out there, bypass and sleeve are the commonest. And anyone who's thinking of getting surgery other than a straightforward bypass or a sleeve should really think twice and get a number of opinions, because the sleeve and the bypass are the tried and tested ones. The cost should be in the region of £10,000 to £12,000, depending on where you go. More expensive in London, cheaper outside, and who the surgeons is. A good surgeon who does good quality work won't be cheap, but that's life.
Yeah.
For anything.
Yeah.
If you want a good lawyer, do you go to the cheapest?
Yeah.
So about £10,000, whereas GLP-1s, you can get them cheap as an introductory, So in the region of 150, 200 pounds to start with an introductory pen.
That's per month,
as
guys,
you go
by the
up-
way.
Per month.
Yeah.
Per month. As the dose goes up, you're looking at 250, 300 pounds. And it depends what level of support you get with that as well. Some pharmacies will be quite cheap, but there's your pen, off you go.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at our app if you want any info. Whereas there are some providers out there who will give you the whole wraparound service with specialist nurse, dietitian, psychologist. Tell us what you need, it's all included. And you pay your money and you take your choice what you need. What I would say is, back at the comment I made a little earlier, if you're going to do this properly, the time you invest with a dietitian and sometimes a psychologist to help you with this, I need my dinner to make me feel happy.
Yeah.
The preparation you spend with those guys will pay you back dividends later. In other words, you're going to spend much less money chasing your tail, searching the internet for why should I go up a dose? Why is it not working? All this kind of thing. That's why you pay a little bit more with certain providers, because they will help you with that.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, you need a support system. You don't need to go through it all alone. This has been one of my favourite episodes, I have to say. It's been really informative, absolutely fantastic. You've made me very happy that I can sip on water whilst I'm having my lunch or my dinner. That makes me very happy. Shaw, thank you very much for your time. I can't wait until we talk again. There's so much we can always talk about. Thank you, Shaw. This has been the Keep It Off podcast. I'm Mel Harris, your host. Everything we've talked about today, everything that we've said is 100% fact-based, science-based. There is no fluff going on here. You can trust us. You really can. And I want you to really take that away. You can contact Shaw. You can contact us. All of our contact details are in the show notes. If you have any questions that you would like us to address specifically for yourself, just write in and let us know. It's not a problem. We would love that. Let us hear your feedback. Please share it with other people that you might think could do with listening to us. And more than that, just keep it real. See you next time.